You're listening to the Unshamed podcast. We talk about important topics that are culturally taboo when it comes to the female body, mind, and soul. We want to break down shame that surrounds these topics so that women can be empowered in their everyday lives. Make sure to like and subscribe and share this with your friends.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Unshamed podcast. I'm here with a special guest who I'll introduce later, but Unshamed podcast is all about talking about things that are typically taboo in regular conversation. So we like to kind of bring things out in the open and help one little bit at a time sort of do our part to dismantle shame culture, and we all have a part to play in that. So Unshamed is sponsored by Zoe Community. We're an Irish organization that empowers communities to support women in crisis pregnancy and connects women to support in their area. So today she's the girl who first endured my husband Blake's pranks, an amazing human being. My sister-in-law, Sarah. So welcome.
Thank you.
And it's so fun to have an actual family member on the podcast. It's really fun. And Blake he's behind the camera right now. He is a total prankster. And Sarah, thank you for taking the heat for however many years.
My gosh.
What would you say the worst?
So glad you stepped in.
I take everything. What was the worst prank he ever pulled on you that you can think of?
The first one that comes to mind, and he probably knows exactly what I'm going to say, is when, I don't know, maybe I was like 8 or 9. We were home alone, and my neighbor friend and I were playing at home. Have you heard the story?
I think I know what you're going to say.
And he, the age of the landline, he called, no caller ID yet, and he pretended to be someone like a stranger, and he was like, I can see you through the window. And I flipped out. And for a while we hid in the house, and then we finally darted out the front door and down 3 doors to our neighbor, and we were like, somebody's looking in our window. And Blake shows up at the door a few minutes later, and he was like, it was me. I think he got in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I don't recall.
He might have gotten in a lot of trouble. Yeah, I feel like he should have.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I've never experienced, thank God. He treats me, I don't know. But once he walked behind me, and all he did, I was just doing something. It was really quiet. He walked behind me, and he just went really quietly, like a chicken. And I turned around and actually started crying because I was so scared. Oh my gosh. So, you have endured a lot to get to this point in your life.
Lots of scares.
Yeah, lots of scares, lots of things. But on a serious note, let's get really serious. So what you have endured that we are going to talk about on this episode is kind of a painful subject, the subject of infertility. So you're here to share your story, your experience with all that, and I'll ask you 3 big questions that I've already told you about, so you kind of know.
Got to think about them, yeah.
And there's a lot of people who are going through infertility right now. You're in the thick of it, or you've been through it in the past, and you might be triggered by some of the stuff we talk about today. So please be kind to yourself. Like we talked about on the last episode with Sheila. I'm going to talk about those things again that we talked about at that one. If you feel triggered, sometimes we have a tendency to get out of our get in our head and hunker down, and just our thoughts tend to spiral. And our psychotherapists who work with Zoe, whenever we talk about heavy subjects, we always have a disclaimer of what to do to stay grounded and in the moment whenever we talk about this stuff. So like the last episode, I'll go through the ways. So one way, and interject if you have a thing that you want to talk about. Yeah. One way is to take a minute and find an object in the room that you find pleasant. Like if you have a plant sitting in the room, or something like your kid's toy, or if you have a favorite thing in the room, just kind of focus on that. It helps you stay right here, present in the room. And another way is to plant your feet on the ground, or if you're in a chair with a back like this, you can probably can't see me because I'm out of the camera, but you can press your back against the chair, really feel the chair, really feel the floor. It helps you stay right here. And then the last thing is to grab a familiar object around you that you like. So like last time I talked about my Zoe ring that I have with a little tree on it, and it's kind of textured. So sometimes like if I have my hands in my lap, I can just kind of, touch my ring and just know that's a familiar object, a friendly object, something that I kind of like, I feel comforted. So those are the things you can do. Any thoughts?
That's awesome.
I
wish I had had practical tools like that for the days I was really in the throes.
I wish I had known that stuff too in the past. I didn't know any of this until we started working with therapists, and I'm like, you guys are so smart.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's what we always do at the beginning of this stuff. So infertility, it's not one of those topics we were saying. It's not one of those things you would sit around the Thanksgiving table with your family and be like, hey, guess what, guys? It's not like a fun anecdote. It's not great. It doesn't feel great to talk about. Yeah, and we kind of feel
a downer.
It's a downer.
Felt like that when I was, don't want to just bring it up in a...
Right. And you can feel like... Yeah, it can feel like, wah, wah, Debbie Downer on SNL, or, you're something. But, it does need to be shared, and you have a right to talk about it. And you are not by yourself either. And every infertility story is different. And today the space is yours to talk about yours. And everybody can experience it differently. Some people have really big, scary stories with lots of things happening. Some people have not too many things happening, and so they can feel like, oh, mine's not big enough to share about. So we talked about that before. You were like, no, no.
Yeah, totally. I was telling you that anybody who knows me or talks to me on a regular basis knows my infertility struggle, journey, story, because I've always been an open book about it, and it's helped me hugely to lean on other people, but I have always hesitated to just put it out there for strangers, or even on social media platforms to like people maybe I don't talk to regularly, because I think the main reason is because I've worried that this is my story and everybody's story is totally, completely unique. And I think I've worried that if I share my story or broadcast it out there, it will come across like I think mine is bigger or smaller than somebody else's. Obviously, this was huge to me and to Dan, and was the hardest 3 years of my life. But it was big, and it reminds me of something I heard my pastor say one time about how one of our speaking pastors, about how no loss is too small to be grieved. And so sometimes I feel like, well, my journey was actually so small, but I grieved it like for real. And anyway, so I just want everyone to know that whatever you're going through is big. It's not too small. And so I just, want to preface with that, I guess, and just say this is my story, and I've, thanks for listening to it. And I just know that everybody's story is unique and huge in its own way, I guess.
Totally. Like I've heard people say, like, oh, I only lost a baby at 5 weeks or something. And so I don't feel like I have the right to grieve that. And I'm like, well, what do you feel like you want to do? Yeah. And, I don't think people feel like they have the right to do certain things, but as far as how you feel, you have the right to feel however you feel, So, but could you share sort of from the beginning, like however much you want to share, about the story, just kind of how it started and how you went through it and how things are going now?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so my story starts like April, May of 2015, and we started trying to conceive after being married 5 years. We're like, okay, we're ready. Started charting my cycles, taking the prenatals, ready, actively trying. And And, first few months didn't work out. I'm a natural worrier, so I was already kind of worried, but I knew that was like irrational at that point because I knew the stat, it usually takes an average of 6 months for someone my age or Dan and I's age. So it wasn't until after 6 months that I really started worrying, oh no, this is taking us longer than average. And it really started getting hard. And then after we'd been trying a year, really worrying. And after that, like, year mark, I feel like it really, really started getting hard. We started, seeking medical attention at that point. And Dan went through all the tests. I went through all the tests. They couldn't find any definitive answer, which was encouraging but also frustrating.
So frustrating.
I
remember at the time thinking, gosh, they're like so healthy. You guys are the people who you'd put like every vegetable in your kitchen into a smoothie and drink it. And I'm like, and all the vitamins. And I'm like, whoa. I'm sitting over there eating a cheeseburger just watching this. But yeah, so.
Well, yeah, it definitely was not perfect. But yeah, I felt like I'm a healthy person. Why is this happening to me or, whatever. But no definitive answer, but my midwife, who I had been seeing for all my well woman visits, she told me that my blood results came back. My FSH level was moderately high, which she explained to mean that just meant my body was having to work a little harder to release eggs, which happens as you age. She said it wasn't a, really high level, but moderately high. So she put us on a drug called Clomid, which helped my body release an egg, essentially, to my understanding. And so I went on that, and then second cycle, I got my first ever positive pregnancy test. And that was like a year and a half after we had started trying. So I was so excited. Mostly, actually, rather than excited, I would say super relieved and kind of like in shock, but like, is this for real? And just like lived with it for a couple days, like didn't really feel real, but and I told Dan, and we were both just like, and then I lost it.
Yeah.
And started bleeding, went to my midwife, and she they weren't sure at that point, but later that day, I was definitely sure. Actually, you know what? So I started bleeding at night and called after hours, and she said, let's give it the night. And then by the morning, I definitely knew. And that's when I went to see her. And so by the time I saw her, I definitely knew. And she definitely knew. And, she was fantastic and was very comforting. But I remember getting back out to the car and just losing it, crying uncontrollably. And again, this is one of the parts of my story that I hesitate to tell because it was so early on and honestly didn't feel very real to me yet anyway. So I cannot imagine like a later term loss because this was hard enough.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember calling Dan, and Dan passed out, which I laugh about now, but it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And I asked his permission if I could share this, and he said yes. Because I think, I think he was teaching at the time and was dog tired.
Oh, yeah, it was a
and
lot of
hadn't
things.
eaten lunch yet.
Yeah.
But also, he said he thinks in retrospect, like he was just so relieved to be done with this. And then when I called him and let him, we're not done with this journey.
Oh.
And he passed out, and I just remember hearing, ooh, and like a thud. And I didn't know if like something terrible had happened at his school, like, just your mind goes a million places.
Yeah, because he was working in a place that wasn't super safe at the time.
And so, so it was just a terrible day. He came to and assured me he was okay. He was going to come home. Then I got home and had locked myself out. Oh. Had to call my dad in tears. Can you come? Anyway, it's,
so horrible.
It was a very tough day. And so we decided to take a couple months off and then return to our last cycle of Clomid, and with no luck. And so at that point, we're 2 years in. just thought, we're just going to take a break.
Yeah, that's a long time to be anxious.
Yeah. Now, people, always say, just stop trying. It's going to happen when you try. That drove me crazy. Just personally, I'm not saying that this would drive everybody crazy, but it drove me crazy because it felt like if you don't have sex, you don't get pregnant.
Yeah.
So how is, that's what it felt like to me. Like, not trying meant don't have sex. Yeah. And I was like, but then...
Wait, sperm isn't airborne, Like
I'm not married.
Yeah, so I know. I mean, I would be so irritated if somebody told me that.
Yeah,
it wasn't the most helpful thing. That. It's not helpful, and it's so irritating because it seems to happen sometimes. Like I know people, who sort of stopped trying and let themselves relax,
right,
and they actually got pregnant, or they a couple of people who got pregnant like right after they adopted a child, brought it home. Oh no, I'm pregnant.
Yes.
So,
and I'm not saying there's nothing to it. I think the sentiment makes sense. Like,
but it's
relax.
Irritating.
But I could not relax. I just couldn't. And so we kept trying, but just using natural interventions, like making sure my nutrition was right. And I mean, if I just was trying to control every variable, and it was driving me crazy because I could never be perfect for 28 straight days. Like, that's how long my cycle was. I couldn't, one cycle, I gave in to that McDonald's, that's what did it, or I didn't exercise enough, or this cycle I exercised too much, or I didn't get enough sleep, or I stressed out. And there's just, you can't be perfect. I couldn't ever be perfect.
No.
Not to give away the ending, but I also wasn't perfect when I finally got pregnant with my, so it just, I thought, my friend told me once, like, I feel like you think you have more control than you really do.
She's insightful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, that whole spring and summer, I sought, everything from just nutrition, supplements, acupuncture, everything. And of, endless amounts of prayer.
Yep. No, we were like praying constantly.
Yeah.
All the back and forth messages. It didn't work this time. It didn't work.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah. And it felt like, I'll move on here in a second.
No,
but
it's
just,
fine. Take your time.
I like to explain that the feeling was like a cycle of the stages of grief, because that actually kind of helped me to identify, like, this is what I'm going through. And it helped me to explain to Dan, like, this is why we have to rehash the same things every month, and it drives you crazy, but this is how I'm feeling. I would get that negative test, and I would feel like in denial for a minute, like, well, maybe I'm pregnant, it's just not showing up yet.
Right. Oh,
and then it would be more real to me, and then I would, get really angry, like super angry at God and my body. And then I would go through the bargaining, like, okay, well, I'll be better this month at nutrition, or I'll pray harder, or what am I doing wrong? And if I do better, then it would go into depression. Sometimes just like a little bit of like one day where I was down and out. And the worst, I mean, I remember like a while, like a couple cycles where I just like didn't want to get out of bed. Remembered to asking Dan, like, what are we I'm not looking forward to anything in life, and just feeling that. And then often I would feel that glimmer of hope again, and a little bit of like, okay, acceptance. It didn't happen this time, but maybe last time, and maybe next time. Yeah. And at the time, sometimes that glimmer of hope would feel like God was teasing me with like dangling a carrot in front of my nose. But in retrospect, I feel grateful that that's how he led me through it, because I don't know if I hadn't ever had those glimmers of hope. Yeah. Even though they were crushed like 35 times or something before, I think, it would have been harder to keep going. Yeah. So, and then 2.5 years in, we still weren't having any luck, and then finally went back and got a higher dosage of Clomid. We decided to seek intervention again, really, which is a whole other topic. Like, we had to discuss, how much intervention do we want to seek? How much money are we willing to pour into this? Luckily, we went back and got a higher dosage of Clomid, and I did get pregnant the second cycle on that on that higher dosage, and that was with Milo, who's now 2.5 years old.
Yay.
So we got pregnant. It didn't feel real for like, I did not want to tell anybody for like, I mean, ever really, but especially till 13
Who's
weeks.
the kid? Oh yeah, I got pregnant, so.
Right. Well, most people share around 12, 13 weeks, and I hesitantly did to close family. But really, every person I told, I just thought, this is one more person I'm going to have to tell if I lose
Right.
him, And then around 20 weeks, anatomy scan was okay. And then 24 weeks, and then I started feeling a little more like this is real. And
Yeah.
sometimes I thought, man, that journey, infertility journey, really stole the joy out of my
Totally.
pregnancy.
Yeah.
But then I would also think, on the other hand, I am not mad to be sick. I am loving it. I will be sick all day, every day, if this baby will stay in me and grow healthy.
Yeah.
So, I guess that's the flip side. But in today's, he's 2.5, and I got another one.
Yeah.
Nolan.
I
Another
know.
one, so
Nolan, who
two.
is being surprisingly quiet right
for the
now.
moment.
I know.
Yeah.
Hey,
Knock on wood, right?
Yeah,
So
gosh,
that's
it's
my
like,
story. Thanks for listening.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for telling it. It's like there's just so many things that you probably think about now, even with your kids, that you're like, the whole guilt, the perfection thing. Does it ever creep back up in other ways, like
Meaning like
after pregnancy,
like when I was trying to control every.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Maybe that's a bit of just my personality. I like to be in control of everything.
We have matching mugs that say, hold on, let me overthink this.
Yes.
But actually, it's not dishwasher safe, I found.
I know. Yep. Mine's worn out because I've worn it.
Yes,
Use it so
rabbit
much.
trail. But anyways, okay, so that was the perfect segue to the questions I wanted to ask you. Question 1. It's like a game show. How do you feel like you were treated by healthcare professionals around you when you were going through this 2.5 years of stuff? And is there anything you would have changed about your experience with all that?
I feel very grateful for the people that cared for me. My midwife was very sensitive, and the nurses were all very sensitive, and I felt like they had gotten to know me well enough by that point. It was kind of a small practice. That I never felt like triggered by something she said that was wrong. And I always felt like that she was encouraging, but also like would just sit with me in my grief and acknowledge like, this is so hard. So I felt grateful for that. And, I feel like she was great about, saying like, these are the steps that we would take. How do you feel about that? We would wait 6 more months, or we would go to a higher dosage of Clomid or whatever, and gave me a feeling like I could choose, make a decision for myself. And also Dan was able to come with me every time, which that support, I needed him there. So I don't know that there's anything I would change. I feel like, that was great. And the other thing that was great is when I went to get during the initial testing, what was that called? Sonohistogram, where they did
where they
ultrasound and put saline.
inject a dye up there so you can see.
Yeah, to make sure nothing's blocked and everything's looking.
Yeah.
That doctor, I specifically just remember how she would explain everything before she did it, and and told me what how I might feel afterwards, and was very sensitive and gentle, and then I remember I went that same place to get my 20-week ultrasound with Milo, and she remembered me. Oh, yeah. And the ultrasound tech did the ultrasound, but the doctor who had done the sonohistogram came in and said, I'm so happy to see you here under different circumstances. And
I know.
She had like a German accent.
When you told me you were getting the sonohistogram, I was so excited because that usually helps. It's like after women get that, it seems pretty common that they get pregnant very quickly after having that, because it just kind of
clears things out. I had heard that.
Yeah.
Didn't work in my case.
No,
but,
that was all disappointing. Yeah.
But I have heard that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt very grateful for all of my.
That's good.
Yeah, because I've heard horror stories about, especially with losses.
Yeah, because sometimes I don't think doctors realize, and nurses, they don't realize how they're coming off to a patient. I know I can look back at, I should have done things differently. Just I was too quick with someone. And how did I make them feel? Because sometimes things are so just work a day for someone in healthcare that,
I mean, you're probably exhausted.
Yeah, you're tired. You got like 4 other patients.
Yeah.
And then you just don't really, sometimes you're not aware of how you're coming off.
Sure.
And then that person, though, goes home and they cry and they think about what you said for days and days. So, yeah, but I'm glad that you had people who were like cool and nice, and that's good. Okay, question 2. What do you wish was different about society to help parents going through infertility? And by society, I mean like our friend groups, family circles, maybe TV, anything like that, you know? What do you think?
Yeah,
I think that was different about society that you could change if you could change something.
Yeah. I think, I was thinking about this question, and I feel like that I see more transparency about this topic than I did like 5 years ago. I don't know if that's just because I'm on the other side of it, but I feel like women are more open now, and maybe social media helps with that. Now, sometimes that helped me and sometimes it didn't. It really had more to do with my headspace. Like I would maybe read somebody else's infertility journey story and it would help one day, but another day if I were in a bad headspace, it would not help, because I'd think, well, that might not be my story.
Right.
And what if I don't end up with a baby? I mean, especially after 2 years, I was like, I need to start really trying to wrap my head around not having a biological child and what's, so... but I do think that society seems to be more open about it now, but more so just with like women sharing stories with other women.
Yeah.
You still don't see stuff about it like on TV or in TV shows or in movies even hardly.
Yeah.
So it does still feel a little bit like isolating when you think about like, you don't hear about it much on TV or in movies.
Yeah, the only TV show I can think of at the moment is Friends, that they did an infertility storyline with Monica, but it's not really out there a whole lot.
Yeah, the other one was Julie and Julia. Did you ever see that movie?
I did.
I loved that movie.
I did. That was a great movie.
And they sort of allude to the Julia Child's.
Oh, yeah, they do. They don't really come right out with it.
So I don't know how historically accurate that is. But the other thing about that, though, is because I had time to think about this question, I thought, one of the times I felt like most frustrated by somebody I was talking to about this was when I called my insurance company. Not really insurance, but like my bill sharing program that we're a part of. And I just said, I figure the answer's no, but do you guys help with infertility costs?
Yeah.
The person, I don't remember if it was a man or a woman, I guess it doesn't matter, but was not very sensitive. Just, oh, no, we don't do that. That's not a part of our plan. And I don't know, I guess like it's not like they're a counselor or a psychotherapist,
no,
so what was I expecting?
But is this the first time you've ever talked to someone?
Yeah, and I just remember just crying and thinking, man, I wish that, because especially if we had to go then to IUI or IVF, I mean, that's so pricey. And I know a couple companies that I've heard of that help offset some of those costs, but most, there's just nothing. And I know like Dan's company, we were very grateful if and when we ever decide to adopt, they will help with that cost, but nothing for infertility. And I just thought, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure everybody has a different opinion about that, but I wished that there was some more, there were more resources available for people who really want to go that route and can't afford it.
Yeah. That would be something really good. Society would consider it a real medical thing, medical condition. It's not really, it's not really acknowledged.
That's,
Yeah. Okay, question 3. How has this whole experience shaped your opinions about social media sharing with pregnancy loss, all that? How is that?
Yeah. I'll start by saying I never publicly shared my story on social media. And I think I was just always, like we talked about at the beginning, and just never wanted... I just always preferred to talk to somebody about it face to face, because if their sister was also going through it but had been going through it for 10 years, I wanted to be able to talk.
Yeah.
But I will say that other people who shared their stories on social media, like 2 or 3 come to mind immediately, really helped me through some dark times, just to think like, kind of live vicariously through their story. And just to know, like, we're not in this alone. And I feel like I've seen a lot more of that lately, just when people make a pregnancy announcement, being mindful of, like, if this is not where your story has led so far, like, I feel for you, or people seem to be sensitive most of the time, but there were definitely times where I would see a pregnancy post and it just cry, or even, personally have, to get real personal, like, you had Eli and my other sisters-in-law. There ended up being about 4 babies born.
Yes, I remember that time.
Like every year.
Yeah.
Bam, 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 bam.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess more than one a year, because it was only 3 years.
I remember
4 babies born. And I remember by the end, Dan's sister was like, I'm going to tell you, Dan, so that you can tell Sarah in the way you think is best.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like I was mad that you were getting a baby. I was not mad.
No, I know, but
it just made me reflect on what I was still felt like I was missing.
Totally. I remember, because we lost Zoe. We lost Zoe kind of in August of 2015, but we came and from Ireland and saw you guys. I think when you were at that 6-month point, when you were like, should I do Clomid or not? Or you might have even started it at that point. And that was when I was trying not to barf on everything because I was so nauseous. And I was like, oh, I don't know, like, I kind of felt bad because you were like wanted a baby, and I was like, oh no, but it is hard because
because I also never wanted somebody to feel like they shouldn't feel joy.
I know.
Because of me. So I just got off social media. And I feel like, you were telling me that in the previous podcast, what she was talking about was, it's like whatever I was reading, if it was getting a reaction out of me, it's like it was in me anyway. So it wasn't your fault. It wasn't anybody's fault who was posting. Sure, it helps if they're a little sensitive and say something, but about, I don't know, being honest about their story or whatever. But it was just like, okay, I'm not in a good headspace. I need to get off. Because for me, I felt like I felt like I benefited more from just personal conversations.
I feel like that same thing has happened with me with any kind of tragedy I've gone through, that people contacting me just on their own through a message or whatever, even though like I would have shared things on social media, like the crowd will have gathered around, but it was like those individual people, either face to face or in like a personal message. That was always my favorite thing, I think, because it really, I don't know, it just felt like very personal. So
I think, so I guess that makes me sort of realize, like, maybe in my opinion, it's people are going to share what they share, and they should. because it might help somebody. But my job is to decide when I'm going through something, if it's going to be helpful or not for me to take it in.
Yeah. You're your own filter, really. And that's kind of goes to show, I mean, it's really kind of applicable to any kind of situation, whether it's pregnancy loss or infertility, or if there's just something going on in your body and you feel extra sensitive about a certain topic, you are your own filter. I have no filter sometimes, and everything just kind of seeps in. The whole grounding stuff, like that, really, that I have to use those things because sometimes I just have no filter. But it is hard to what we allow into our minds, and it affects our bodies, what we allow in, and it's sometimes harder when it comes to social media, all that.
And sometimes I felt like, oh geez, like I should have shared my story, because there is this movement now to be open and get our stories out there, because it does make you feel less alone. But I just remember thinking, like, and I remember asking Dan, like, I feel like I should share my story, but I feel like it's mostly out of guilt or, like a sense of obligation, not that I actually think, because I'm not sure anything like that truly, truly helped me.
Yeah.
It was the personal connections. And I just remember Dan saying, like, which, by the way, Dan is like the least millennial person at the age of 35 that you'll ever meet. So he's not big on social media. I should preface with that.
Oh, yeah.
But he was like, then don't. I mean, don't share out of guilt. Share. Are you sharing with the people that you talk to every day? Are you open and inviting people to, to lean on each other? I mean, that's what matters.
Totally.
Like real face-to-face stuff. Not that social media doesn't matter. It has a place. It for sure has a place, but
it's only a launching off point.
Yeah, and for me, it just didn't ever feel quite like the way I wanted to. Yeah. Put my story out.
Totally. I think like every little bit in our own little way of how we want to do that, whatever's beneficial for you, because if it doesn't feel right to share it with the wider public, then it doesn't feel right. And like social media or even this podcast, it's only a launching off point for the real meaningful communication that really needs to happen.
Yeah, true, yeah.
Person to person. But that being said, we'll recap a little bit.
Yeah.
That I just wanted to thank you for sharing. Like, I have heard the story, and we feel like we've lived the story because we were, with you guys.
With us, every step of the way.
And it's really an honor because, you're right in that you have how and where and when, you want to share is very important, because we always say this with our Zoe teams that whenever you share your story, a little piece of you goes out with it. And it is yours to own. So like that you really do own the manner in which you tell about what happened to you. So thank you for sharing today. And you sharing, it does help empower people to realize that they aren't alone, because I think more people than we realize are going through this. And they might be going through it very privately, because it can feel very shameful. To like, there's so many girls like popping out babies, and it feels like all they have to do is sneeze and they pop out a baby. And so like,
you get to a point you don't want to be pitied. You don't want to be, you don't want to just, I don't know, feel a little like, what's wrong with me?
And it's tough when you feel like there is something, it's not something you did bad, but it's something wrong with you that you feel.
That's what you feel like, and it is not. It's not.
No. It's nothing you did. No, nothing. So we have to be reminded over and over, it's not, there's nothing wrong with us. We're not broken. We just live in a world where things happen, I want to say what a blank happens, but we have a wide audience, so I'm not gonna say. But we've talked about things that we would change in society, people around us, social media, all that kind of stuff. It's tricky, but it's one person at a time if we can do our little bit. But if you're listening and you haven't gone through infertility or anything, what you can do is I guess be sensitive. You know, if you know a couple who they've been married forever and they don't have kids, like maybe don't go, when are you getting pregnant?
Right.
I think we all kind of know that, but it's helpful to, say it every once in a while. Don't ask them when they're going to have a baby. So that's a good thing. Or even like, if whatever, be mindful of what you're about to share on social media and who's watching. Mm-hmm. So
definitely.
I have to be reminded of that all the time, I think. Yeah. But thank you for listening to us, you guys. Join us next time on the Unshamed podcast, and we'll be talking about... we will be talking about things related to how to help our bodies stay healthier. Either that, or we might switch it up and have our special guest, Sheila Harper, come in and talk about her pregnancy loss experience and what she does with her organization. But until then, keep living unshamed.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Unshamed podcast. Join us next time for another topic that we hope empowers you. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this with your friends.